I'm all set up. I've got the tools that I need. I know that it's a 21 millimeter socket for this because it's a Toyota. So the wheel nuts are going to be 21 millimeters. Okay, I've got my 21 millimeter socket. I'll just quickly show you what's on my cart. So on my cart, I've got my 1/2 inch impact gun. Okay, I've got a 14 millimeter wrench. I've got a 12 millimeter wrench. 14 millimeter wrench is going to be for the oil drain. I've got my 21 millimeter socket right here. That's for the wheel nuts. And then I've just got a pair of pliers, just in case I need a pair of pliers for something. I'm also going to pull out my measuring tools, which I should have done it. And I'll show you those too. I'm going to get them out of the toolbox. And these are special tools, okay? So these are special brake pad measuring tools, and I'll explain them to you, okay? So you've got various colors, red, yellow, and green, okay? And you guys all know what those mean, right? So red means, it's really bad, okay? Green means it's fine. Yellow means caution, okay? So just like your lights, okay, at your intersections, your stop signs, I guess, not stop signs, but your stop lights, if you want to call them that. Red just simply means there's no more brakes left, okay? You got to change them. Yellow means it's about time to change them, okay, but you have a little bit more life left. And then obviously green means that they're good. So what we're doing is we're literally measuring the thickness of brake pads. And I can't show you this. I can show you it right now, but you can see the green is quite thick, all right? So from here to here, it's quite thick. And then we slowly, if you're looking through my fan here, we slowly go from thickest, which is basically brand new, okay? And we gradually get thinner and thinner until we're going down to like, I think this one here is about, I think it's 2 millimeters. Yeah, that's 2 millimeters at the bottom. That's just, there's no more brake left, okay? By that time, that you should have probably already worn out your wear bar, which is something that warns you audibly, or the brake light should have been on your dash saying that you need brake pads, okay? So these are the tools that I'm going to be using for now, and I'm going to fire through this, okay? All right, I'm putting it up in the air because I want to get the oil draining, and I'm going to set everything up, and I'm going to bring it down as low as possible. All right, so I've got my drain pan here, and I'm going to find where the oil is. I'm going to take out that filter. Okay, so we've got a filter that was sitting in there for 24 hours. All right, so that filter is gone. All right, it was sitting inside for 24 hours. We're going to dispose of it. Okay, I'm going to put it in the oil filter container over there. I'm going to start draining the oil. So I've located my drain plug. Good, I've got my oil filter right here. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to drain the oil. I'm going to set this up. And as the oil is draining, okay, I'm going to start doing other things on the vehicle, okay? Now don't forget, I'm not going to get any oil on my hands, and I'm removing my glove just in case. I don't want this glove covered in oil, all right? So oil's going to come out. As the oil's coming out, I'm going to do some other checks on this car. Okay, so the oil is draining, and as the oil is draining, I'm going to make some other checks on the vehicle. So while I'm doing that, okay, I'm going to be looking to see if there's any leaks on the car. I'm looking on the car, and I don't see any leaks on the car. I look at the oil filter, can't get the oil filter off. I've got a special tool. You guys were in school, we're doing cabinet 6. And I've got this special tool here, okay? This special tool will grab the oil filter, all right? And then I can take it out. And what I've done is I've equipped this toolbox that I'm working from. I've equipped this toolbox with a couple of tools, okay? So I'm going to use an extension. I'm going to use my ratchet, right? And I'll be able to unscrew or loosen that oil filter. I don't know who put this oil filter on, but this oil filter is not coming on. Holy smoke. Holy smokes. Whoever put this oil filter on did not want it to come off. So maybe, yeah. Oh my God. So maybe they didn't lubricate. Maybe they didn't lubricate the seal. Or maybe they just cranked it on with a, they probably cranked it on with a tool. Okay, so when you do an oil change on a car, you don't put the oil filter on that tight. You don't crank it on tight. You just put it on hand tight. It's a half to about 3/4 of a turn after it touches the block. And once you do that, it's okay. So if somebody really cranked this on, they probably cranked it on with a tool. And when you do that, guys, it gets really hard to remove. Okay, if I didn't have that, if I didn't have that special tool, it wouldn't have come off. So I'm walking onto the car. I'm taking a good look to see if there's any oil leaks, if there's anything that looks kind of bad. I'm checking my rubber bushings. I'm checking my exhaust. I'm checking my links. There's certain way to check links. There's certain way to check ball joints. There's certain ways to check tie rod ends. I can't explain it to you not today, but I will show you some of the things that we do. So I've just checked the car from the front to the back. Don't see any leaks. So there's no brake fluid leaks. There's no fuel leaks. There's no oil leaks. Lots of stuff under here, though, guys, is rusted. Okay. It's an older car. He's got a hole in the back here in the trunk area. It's not structural, but there is a hole. Okay, so there's a big hole in the back of this car. I'm checking. So now that I've seen a hole, guys, once you see that, if you see a hole, then you want to just check the rest of the car. And David, I know you don't want me to do this, okay, but this is why I have this here. I need a bigger one, so I'm not going to use this one, okay, because it's too small. I'm going to use a bigger screwdriver. So what I do is I just kind of take a little bit larger screwdriver, and I'm just anywhere where there's rust, I'm just going to kind of give it a little tap, okay? If the screwdriver goes through, well, that means the metal is weak in that area, and I just know it, right? So I'm just going to walk along, and if I see any other areas of badly rusted sheet metal, I'm just going to kind of shove it through. But there's also a lot of plastic on the bottom of this car. I'm just kind of checking areas where it looks a little bit rusty, but if you hear that noise, if I find a light over here to show you, there's a hole right here. And David, I know I'm making it bigger, but I just want to get a good look in there to see what this is. And it doesn't look too bad. No, it's okay, so I don't think it's actually going into your trunk, but it's kind of at the side of your trunk. So I'm just going to make it. Okay, so you've got a little bit of a hole here on the right side mirror, right in the back corner. The rest doesn't look too bad. There's an awful lot of plastic underneath there, guys. And again, a lot of the manufacturers put a lot of plastic to improve the aerodynamics of the vehicle. Okay, so for this one here, it's not really for high speed running because it's a Prius, but it's more just so that for fuel economy, you're getting the best airflow over and under the car so that you've got as little drag as possible. Okay, so drag is just friction within the air. So that's why they kind of do that on a car like this. So they're not worried about the high speed running on the Autobahn. They're just worried about fuel economy. Okay, his rotors are a little bit rusty, but again, we're gonna pull the wheels off, we're gonna check it. Looks like his brake pads are really good. I haven't pulled the wheel off, so I haven't measured. I've also got to pull off his back wheels just to measure. And by the looks of it, he's had the brake pads done. Not obviously not that recently, but they have been done. The tires are in super condition. All right, so he's got 4 tires on this. They're in great condition. There's no leaks. The car looks good underneath. I've checked everything. So what have I checked? I'm going to check it off. I'm going to tell you when I'm looking at it, okay? So I've checked for going all the way down, tire conditions. The pressure is probably okay. I'm going to say tires are good. I've already kind of looked at the brake linings, but I have to measure them, so I want to measure them, so we'll do that. Front suspension, we haven't done it yet, and I'm going to show you how quickly it is. Exhaust system and mounting components. When I started the car, this is an electric, it's a hybrid car. So it always starts first in electric mode. And then when the motor, when it senses that the battery's gone down a little bit, it'll turn the motor on to start recharging the battery, right? So when that motor, when the engine did start, okay, I listened to it. It didn't sound like there was any exhaust leaks. And I've just done a visual inspection underneath on the exhaust system, and it looks okay. So we've covered that. There's something called dust covers and drive shaft boots. I've already done that. Again, we're not going to discuss that today, but I'm going to show you what I've done on this, and they all look okay. There's no leaks. There's no visible leaks, okay? I cannot check the fuel filter because the fuel filter on this vehicle is in the gas tank with the fuel pump. So I can't check it. So I just write down in tank, okay? And I put NA, which is not applicable because I can't check it, okay? The very last thing on the bottom is drive belts. And I haven't done that as yet because I've got to go up to the top of the car, all right? For me to check my suspension and my steering, I'm just gonna give the wheel a shake. And again, I can't explain to you guys what I'm doing. I'm gonna be rocking the wheel. So I'm gonna be rocking the wheel like this. I'm not gonna be turning the wheel, okay? I'm going to be rocking the wheel like this, okay? And I'm going to rock it up and down. And when I rock it like this, I'm checking steering and I'm checking suspension components. And when I rock it up and down like this, I'm just checking just suspension, okay? So I'm going to do that real quick. I'm going to run around all 3 corners of the car. I'm going to check all 4 wheels, okay? So that means I'll cover front suspension and rear suspension, all right? I want to bring the car down a bit so I can get it in a better spot for me. Right now, the oil is it's just dripping into the pan. So if it's just dripping in the pan, almost all the oil is out. But I'm going to bring the car down. So I'm removing the wheel locks, okay, and I'm removing 2 wheel nuts. And the only reason I'm doing that is because I can, and air was coming out of the hoist. Okay, I've still got the oil draining, but I need to keep 2 wheel nuts on. And the reason I need to keep 2 wheel nuts on is because I've still got to check the suspension. So as the air was coming out of the tank, I was being more efficient. I was just taking off some of these wheel nuts, okay? I'm gonna bring the car down a little bit. So what I did was I brought the spout down, I brought the funnel down on the oil filter, I got a reservoir here, okay, or drain if you want to call it that. All right, so I wouldn't crush it. So now that I have the tires here, kind of like at chest height, now I can work it. Now I can check my suspension, okay? So I'm just gonna rock the tire back and forth like this. And I'm gonna do that on all 4 wheels. And all I'm doing is I'm making sure that it's nice and tight. And it all feels really good. And because it all feels really good, now I can take off the wheels. Okay, so I've got two axles. Now, these wheels are a little stuck, so they haven't come off. Okay, so can't get the wheel off. Okay, I'm going to put one wheel nut back on. Not tight. I'm just going to catch it a couple of threads. And when I catch it a couple of threads, okay, I can either take a hammer, a rubber mallet to the wheel, or I can just try and kick it. So I'm going to try and kick the wheel to loosen it, to take it off the hub. Okay, so I've moved my stuff back, and okay, so now that frees it from the hub, and I've got that wheel off. Okay, now the reason the wheels always stick to the hub is because you get rust built up here. And one of the things that I teach you guys when we're doing a brake service is we lube everything, all right? So we use a special lubricant. Again, I'll talk to you guys about that. But when we put brakes together, these brakes were done. These brakes were done somewhere, and they didn't put any lube anywhere, which is okay. Because a lot of mechanics, when they see that the way that the brakes are installed from the dealer, so at the factory, they don't put any lubricant, all right? At 24,000 kilometers, you're supposed to take the car back to the dealership. And what the dealership will do is they'll literally pull the brakes apart, okay? They'll lube all the places where the brake pads slide. They'll lubricate the hub so that the roller doesn't stick to the hub, okay? But there's many, many places that will do a brake job just like this, where they don't put any lubricant anywhere because the lubricant's a little bit expensive, okay? And maybe they just don't know that if we put some lube in these spots, the rotor won't stick. So right now, if I try to take this rotor off, I got it loose, okay? But what we would do here in the shop is we would pull it all apart. We pull the brake pads out, pull the calipers off, pull the caliper bracket out, pull the rotor off, and we will put some lubricant in all those special spots, okay? That would prevent the rotor from sticking to the hub. And not only that, by lubricating around the hub here, that prevents the rim or the wheel from sticking onto this, okay? So I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. I'm going to check the brake pads on this, and they're great. They're in good condition. I'm just going to measure them, and I'm measuring them with my special tool. I'm measuring the outside pad, and now I'm going to measure the inside pad. Okay, and so David, right now they're at 8 millimeters. I'm going to write that down. So I just checked front suspension and steering. I've just checked rear suspension and steering. My front brake line is there at 8. Now, I can't just write that down. That's 8 on this side, but I'm going to go over on the other side, and I'm going to measure the other side too. You want to measure both sides because they don't necessarily wear at the same time, at the same rate, okay? So I could go over there, and they could be at 2, all right? Just because if something is stuck, they could be at 2. I doubt it. They all look good. So I checked it with my light while I was underneath. But I'm going to go to the back now, okay? The back has slightly different brakes. They're called drum brakes. And you can't see what I'm doing in the back here. So that's a little bit better. Okay, so the back has slightly different brakes. This wheel's come off, okay? So this rim has come off from the hub, so this one's okay. But it's got drums in the back. So they treat these a little bit different. Okay, these drums come off, I can see that. I'm going to need a hammer. I'm going to need a metal hammer, okay? Got a nice size metal hammer here, okay? I'm going to beat on his brake drum. Brake drums haven't been off in a while. They're really quite rusty. They don't look too bad, but again, they've rusted at the hub, and because they've rusted at the hub, I'm just bringing my microphone. Because they've rusted at the hub, okay, which is in the center. Right now, the drum is kind of stuck on the hub, and I don't know how I'm going to be able to get this off. Normally, hammering it will take them off. So hammering the brake drum would usually loosen it. This one's not being loosened. I'm going to try and use my impact hammer on it with a chisel. I just kind of vibrate it from the back, and if it comes off, it comes off. If it doesn't, I'm just going to leave it, okay? So again, these are some of the things that you guys will do. I'm just going to take my impact hammer. I'm not going to hit it too hard, okay? I want to try and get the drum off so I can take a look at the shoes underneath. And everything looks good. It looks nice and dry. The shock absorber in the back here that I can see along with the springs, they all look good. Nothing's broken, nothing's cracked, nothing's leaking. I'm just going to try and hit this drum from behind and see what happens. David, I'm sorry, I'm trying to take this off. And the only thing that's happening is there's an awful lot of rust. There's an awful lot of rust dropping out of this car, okay? Not the car, it's dropping out of the drum. The drum is made out of metal. The backing plate is made out of metal. And you can hear that as I spin it. That's just rust that's fallen out. And I really don't want to do any more damage in there. I haven't done any damage. I'm just kind of breaking up the rust. And because it's not coming off, I'll put some penetrating oil on it to see if maybe it'll start to free up. But right now, guys, I'm just going to leave it, okay? When we start doing this sort of stuff, if I try too hard, what ends up happening is I damage stuff on the inside, trying to take it off. So I just leave it. It's better for me to just leave it. If the customer has a specific problem with the rear brakes, then I can go in there because then I can charge them. But in an environment like this where I don't have access really to parts, okay? I leave it, okay? And I usually tell that to the students, if it's too badly rusted, we just leave it alone. So I'm going to spray some lubricant on it, just kind of in the middle in the hub where it's stuck. We did this on a grade 12. I had 3 students in each of my grade 12 cohorts on last quad, and they all had cars, which was awesome. And because they had cars, we could actually work on them because they were part of the cohort. And I don't like that noise because now when he's driving, he's going to get a little kind of funny noise as the car is driving down the road. So I'm leaving it for now. Okay, we're going to take off the rest of these wheels and I'm going to check the brakes. Okay, so I'm going to go to the other side. I'm going to check the brakes on that side. I'm going to measure it and I'm going to write it down on my piece of paper. Okay. David, I'm going to try out this side. This side looks a little bit better. It looks a little bit more promising. I'm going to try with my hammer on the other side and see if I can get the drum off. And that way, at least we can measure. Okay, it's not coming off, so I'm going to leave it alone. I'm putting the wheel nuts back on. Those wheel nuts are back on. I don't like the way this sounds, but there's rust rolling around inside that drum. Not much I can do there. I'm not going to fight with taking these drums off because, like I said, I could possibly do more damage taking the drums off and fighting with them than leaving it alone, okay? And the brakes feel fine. Yeah, I'm going to the front. So I'm probably going to end up with the same problem on this side, which is the wheel stuck onto the hub. Started off, so it wasn't too bad. I'm measuring the brakes on this side, and it looks to me like they are about the same size as the other side, which is 8 millimeters. So I'm measuring the inside, I just measured the outside. I just checked it to make sure everything is okay. I'm actually adding a little bit of lubricant to the hub in the front here. I'm going to add a little bit to the inside of the rotor. So what I did on the other side is I just added some lubricant around the center hub area here, okay? So adding just a little bit of lubricant. I don't want to go crazy on it. These are the front brakes. I don't want any lubricant getting onto the rotor surface. So I'm just adding a little tiny bit of lubricant, okay? It's probably going to burn off with the heat created with the brakes. But by adding a little bit of lubricant, that will prevent my rim or my wheel assembly from sticking onto the hub, okay? So I've checked front brakes. I cannot check back brakes, and I'm just going to write that down. Again, I don't bother doing that because if I try to get under those drums and they're that hard to take off, I'm probably just going to cause more damage inside. Okay? Okay, good. All right, we're done. If you guys take a look at the side of the car, there has been some painting done to the surface of the car. So this front bumper looks like it's been replaced before. This isn't quite all the way in. I've got some, you know what, I'll bring the camera here just so you guys can see it, okay? So if I pull the camera in, I'll show you, all right? Let me pull the camera in, and I want to show you guys this because this is easy to see, all right? So when we're looking up in here, okay, if you guys look up in here, I've got this boot. Let me see what I can do here. See that? Okay, so I'm going to show you what I see here. All right, so up in here, let me get my pointer. Up in here on this shock here, I've got a shock absorber here, okay? And above this shock absorber, I'm supposed to have this really long rubber boot. So part of it is kind of like right here. You can see it hanging, okay? So this rubber boot is not actually supposed to end here. It's actually supposed to cover this whole thing here. So that rubber boot is torn right off. And I'm just going to note that, okay? Because that rubber boot has torn off from here. So it's supposed to start from here, from the very top, and it's supposed to run all the way down to here to cover this area here, okay? And what it does is it's like kind of like a protection. It's like a raincoat if you want to call it that, okay? So it's like a layer of protection that protects this thing, which is the shock absorber, okay? So this right here, okay, is the rod coming out of the shock absorber, and we're supposed to have like a protective boot that goes over and prevents any dirt and dust and salt and any of that sort of stuff from getting onto this. Because when this gets covered in dirt and salt and sand, what ends up happening is we rip the seal that's inside the shock absorber, and what happens is if the fluid comes out of the shock absorber, because it's a hydraulic unit, it no longer works properly. So this boot is just there to protect the shock absorber or the strut, okay, and extend its life. With no boot there, okay, and you can clearly see this is a little piece of boot that's left, and this boot isn't even supposed to be here. This boot is supposed to be connected to this, all right? So it's ripped off and it's kind of got jammed in between this and this rubber right here, all right? So nothing I could do about that. I could just write down and say like the boot is torn. It's not even worth replacing because right now I can see, you can clearly see that the strut here is all rusty, all right? So we're not gonna change a boot on a rusty strut. We're just gonna wait until it fails. And then when we do the struts, we can do that, okay? But the car's fairly old, it's still running right. There's no leaks, there's no fluid leaks. You can see that it's nice and dry. So it's dry but rusty, which is great, that's okay. So it's not leaking, so I don't have to write that down. But I'm gonna write down that my boot is torn, okay? And it's torn on both sides. Okay, there's the car again. All right. All right, let me just put the sucker back together. Okay, so I'm gonna fire the wheels on this side, and fire the wheels back on this side. So the next thing that I've got to do, guys, is check under the hood. So we're going to move the car down, and we're going to move under the hood on this car. Got my tools, got my... So when we're doing wheels, okay, we always do a crisscross pattern. Okay, so I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the last one is going to be the wheel lock. So when you've got wheel locks on a car, you take the wheel lock off first, but then when you put it back on, you put it on last. Okay, so here's my wheel lock, and I'm putting my wheel lock on last. That's it. Okay, so I'm just checking them by hand to make sure they're all tight. And when I bring it down, we're going to use a torque wrench on it. We're going to torque them properly, okay? And these are small, light little wrenches. I can just kind of pick them up with one hand. No big deal. I love small little cars. Easy to work on. Components aren't very heavy. So again, I'm going to put my wheel lock on last. I'm going to go crisscross pattern, okay? My wheel lock goes on last. Why do we use the red gun? We use the red gun because it doesn't have a lot of power. So I'm still going to have to turn these nuts a little bit when I torque them to spec, okay? I'm just going to take the car up. I'm going to get the oil, filter out. Now the oil filter on this car, it faces down, okay? So the oil filter faces down, all right? So I've got to take my gloves off because I'm going to make a mess, all right? So if you're working with latex gloves or nitrile gloves, totally fine. I just don't want to get my mechanics gloves covered in oil, right? Because then I'm working in them forever. So I'm gonna put my drain plug back in. I'm gonna make sure I tighten it up properly. Drain plug's back in. There isn't even any oil dripping out of this anymore. I've tightened it up. I'm gonna drop out my oil filter, and that's gonna make a mess, and there's nothing I can do. I've let it drain as much as possible, but there's still gonna be a little bit of oil in the filter. Maybe not. Yeah. Okay, so my oil filter's out, and you can see that I'm draining all that was left in the filter. I didn't get my hands too dirty, okay? I think we drained most of the oil. Now, if you guys remember my little trick from yesterday, I'm going to show you guys what I do with the new oil filter, okay? Let me ask. Let me see if I can get Carton to answer this maybe today. What do I need to do, Carton, if Carton is with us? Carton, what do I need to do with the new oil filter? What's the first thing that I've got to do? If he's around. So David's got a little oil filter here, great. It's got a little piece of like saran wrap on it there. Don't worry about it, Carton, that's fine. Ryan, tell him what has to be done. What is the first thing we got to do with the oil filter? What do we got to do with it? You can throw it in the chat. If you don't know, just say, I don't know. It's fine. Don't sweat it. Or say, I don't know, sir. I forget. Go ahead. Who else can I ask? Casper. Casper's in the 8 class. Casper, go ahead. What do I have to do? First thing I got to do with the oil filter is?
Is it lube or oil in it?
You got it, okay? So if you guys remember from yesterday, we got to lubricate this, okay? So this is my rubber seal, and you want to lubricate it. What does that do? It helps to make it seal, but it also helps to take it off, okay? So if we put this on dry, all right, and we tighten it up, it makes it incredibly difficult to take off. Now, you guys heard me kind of straining to take that filter off, and that filter was on really tight. So someone took the extra effort, stupidly, to really tighten this. So maybe they took their tool and really tightened it, or they cranked the sucker on by hand until it couldn't possibly spin anymore, okay? If we're looking at, there's no instructions. Yeah, there's instructions on this, but they're not visual, so they're not pictures. It actually has instructions in English, and you've got to read it, right? So it says, be sure to remove the old gasket and lubricate the new gasket. Install the new filter on the threaded stud. Tighten 3/4 to 1 turn after gasket connects to the base, okay? So I usually say 1/2 to 3/4. They're saying 3/4 to 1. I've never been able to turn an oil filter by hand 1 full 360 degrees after it touches the base on the engine block, okay? So 3/4 is probably about as tight as you can get, but sometimes even 1/2 a turn is enough to tighten it up, okay? So what I showed you guys last time was this. Take the old oil filter and just do this, okay? And once I do that, okay, my gasket, it's coated in oil. So you can see the oil on the gasket, okay? It's coated in oil. I don't even have to get my hands dirty, okay? I don't have to run anything there. I'm not going to fill up the oil filter with oil. I'm just going to put it on. They're so small that it'll fit up. It usually fills up in less than a second, okay, once we start the car. So we're going to put it on. Make sure my gasket is on. Okay, and I've tightened it. I've managed to tighten it about maybe 3/4 of a turn. All right, and that's tight enough. I'm just going to give it a wipe where the oil is kind of drained down. And what I did was I also did this, and I want to show you guys this, okay, because that's important. When we take the oil filter out, we have to make sure that when we take the oil filter out, that this gasket is still on the oil filter, okay? Because sometimes what happens is this gasket comes off. And if this gasket comes off and it's stuck to the block, okay, our new filter will not seal. We have to remove it from the block and then put the new filter on, okay? Again, we're going to let this drain for 24 hours. I'm just gonna leave it in here. I'm gonna let it drain for 24 hours, and then I'm gonna put it in my used oil filter container, okay? Okay, so I've wiped everything up. I'm gonna bring the car down because I've got to do my underhood checks now, okay? Okay, I'm back. I tripped over the cord. Okay, so I've kind of put it on a decent angle that you guys can see. What you can notice here is that the bumper is a different color than the fender, okay? And when you go down towards the back of the car, what you're gonna notice is right along here, look how nice and shiny the paint is, okay? That's factory paint, okay? As we go down towards the back of the car, there's been some painting on the car. I guess maybe there was a little bit of rust, maybe there was a scratch or two, and someone just kind of quickly took a spray can to it and just kind of sprayed it, right? So these are some of the things that you want to look at when you're looking at cars when they're in the shop. Not everybody can afford a new car, all right? So we try and protect the vehicles that we drive with what we can do, okay? So bumper is made out of plastic. We don't have to worry about painting it. You can leave it like this, okay? It's not going to make a difference. It's not going to rust. If you get any kind of scratches on the surface of your car, on the body panels, you want to try and protect them. So if we're looking down further in the back of the car, the paint here just kind of looks dull because someone took a can of spray paint and just kind of spray painted it, thinking that it would match. Well, that's not the way it works, right? So there's a couple of dents here. There's a couple of runs here with the paint, and it kind of goes right back through to this area here. So maybe someone had scratched the car and they just wanted to protect it. So they threw on some paint, okay? Nothing wrong with that, okay? It's an older car. I'm gonna bring the car down and we're gonna get under the hood. Okay, while I'm here, car's down on the ground, I'm gonna turn on all the lights. And if I turn on all the lights, okay, I can check all the lights on the vehicle, all right? So I check all the park lights, I'm gonna check the headlights, I'm gonna walk around. Yeah. Yeah, all my lights are working. Everything looks good. Yeah, it all looks good. We've still got a noise coming from the back of this because I was trying to take these drums off and there's some rust rolling around in there. I've got to check the brake lights. And in order for me to check the brake lights, because I'm all alone, I'm going to use my hammer. Okay? So I'm just going to use my hammer down underneath the seat. And if I do that, I can check the brake lights. Yep, brake lights are all good. For me to check reverse, I've got to put the key in and I've got to put it in reverse. I'm kind of scared to put this key in because it's going to be trouble for a little bit. Okay? So, lights on. Now, I don't want to start the car because there's no oil in it. Okay? So I just want to put it in reverse, okay? You know what? Because this is a hybrid, I'm not even. Let's see what happens. or you want to put it in reverse. So I'm just going to turn off the power. Got my key out, which isn't really a key. It's just a remote. And I'm gonna move my camera over to the other side so you guys can see this engine. And what's nice about this is it's a hybrid. So you can kind of see what a hybrid looks like underneath, which is kind of cool. So good. With the hybrid power plant, guys, we've got, and you guys will see this, and it says hybrid technology right on top of it, because that's just the way it is. Okay. Let's see. Can you get a good look at this? Let's see if I can move here. Yeah, you can see it. You can see the engine. Okay. So what we have here is a hybrid power plant. So hybrid simply means like it's kind of like a mixture. Okay. So it's kind of a hybrid between two things. So over here we've got a tiny little internal combustion engine. So an ICE engine we call it. Okay, an engine. An engine uses heat energy. So this particular engine here, like most cars, it uses gasoline. So the engine runs from about here to about here. Okay. Over here, okay, this isn't necessarily your battery packs, because your battery packs are in the body of this car down at the bottom on the floor. Okay. But this has all of the electrical components that control the motor on this vehicle. And the motor on this vehicle is kind of sandwiched between the engine and the transmission. So it's a round motor. It's round. It's probably about this big. It's a motor that's round, and it sits between the engine. So if we've got the internal combustion engine here and we've got the transmission, okay, you've got the engine, you got the motor, and then you got the transmission, okay? And the only thing the motor has to do is spin the transmission. And if we can spin the transmission, we can spin the wheels. That's the only thing the engine does too. When we start the engine, it starts to spin, okay? And when it spins, it can spin the wheel, all right? David, you've got a coolant leak, and it's coming out of your water pump. It's a very, very, very slow leak. It's not dripping on the ground as yet, but I can see that here, okay? Because I can see the coolant coming out because it's pink in color, okay? What do we got to do? We are going to check everything that we've got on this list. We're going to run through it. So let me just see what I've checked so far. So I've checked my brakes. They're at 8 millimeters all the way around. I'm going to write that down. My rear linings I'm going to put did not check because the drums are stuck, but I'm just writing that didn't check it. Steering components I've checked. Front suspension and steering. Rear suspension I've checked. Exhaust system I've checked. Dust boots I've checked. We're going to check the spark plugs, okay? I've checked all the exterior lights. They're all okay. Tire conditions and pressures are all okay. There is no power steering in this. Well, there is, but it's electric. I'm just going to jot that down, okay? You know what I forgot to do? I forgot to check the horn and the wipers, but we'll check that later, okay? The battery fluid on this, the battery on this, we don't check because, again, it's a hybrid, so we can't check it. So I'm going to write down on this one, it's a hybrid vehicle. So that's up at the top. We're going to get the air filter. We're going to check the air filter. And right below it, it says engine oil level and condition. I'm going to say new and good. I'm going to check off okay. The brake fluid level, I've already checked it. Now, you guys didn't see it, but I checked it here. All right. So right here, we've got the brake fluid, the reservoir. All right. And if you guys can see it, I know you can see it because I can see it, okay, on mine. You can see the level. And you've got a minimum mark down here, and you've got a maximum mark. And it's right at maximum because the front brakes were done recently. Okay, at 8 millimeters, they're almost brand new. The fluid color is beautiful. The color looks great. The level is good. All right. So it says brake fluid level, it's good. Clear. Great. All right. Clutch and automatic transmission fluid levels, we haven't checked that as yet, but we've got to get the car running. So in order to check the clutch, the transmission fluid level, I have to check it with the engine running. Okay. Now for both the front brakes and the back brakes, I'm going to recommend a service simply because there was no lube put on it. And that's just what we do when we're doing that in the shop here, because what we do is we inspect the vehicles first. And when we inspect the vehicles first, then the customers bring it back. It's usually the teachers, they'll bring it back because we'll tell them what it needs, and everything gets done for free. The only thing that they have to pay for is if they need parts. And even then, they don't have to pay for parts. They can supply the parts and bring it to me, or they can have them check. So let's check the air filter. Just a matter of pulling off a bunch of clips, okay? Tiny little air filter because it's a tiny little engine, okay? And you just kind of slip it out here, all right? And here's what you do, okay? Here's the air filter, all right? That's the top of the air filter. It looks kind of okay. It's not new, but it's been in there for a while. But you know what? It's not dirty. So this car gets driven in the city primarily because there's nothing underneath. There really isn't any like dust and dirt in either the filter housing, which is right here, okay, or in the bottom of this filter. So I'm going to write down it's okay. It's been in there for a while, but the most important thing is I'm going to do it so you guys can see it. What you want to do when you're checking the filter is take a light, okay, and make sure the light shines through the filter. So if you guys can see the light shining through, which you can, the filter's still okay. All right, yeah, it's a little bit old, but you know what? It's doing its job. It's there to filter the air and make sure that the air can get through, all right? So if you shine a light through it and you cannot see the light through the filter, then you have to change the filter because it's not doing what it's supposed to do. It's not letting enough air through it, okay? So you can clearly see, you can see the light through it. I can see it on the camera, so that means you guys can see it on the camera. Air filter's still okay, okay? Visually, it's a little bit old, not too worried, okay? Slip it back in, make sure my gasket goes in properly. Now, I'm not going to put this cover back on. And the reason I'm not going to put the cover back on is because my oil filler cap is right here. The oil filler cap is right here. Okay, and again, on my oil filler cap, it tells me exactly what I need. And if we're looking at it, all right, it says for gasoline engines, and then it says API SL. So that's a grade, okay? And then the viscosity of the oil that you want is a 5W30. Now, David, what did you give me? You gave me a 520. Listen, this is what the customer supplied. So what you've done is you've given me an oil that's a little bit thinner than what it recommends, and you're running it in the summer. I don't recommend you use this oil, okay? I recommend you to go with a 5W30, which is what it recommends, or 10W30, because it's the summertime. You can use a little heavier oil, and it'll give the engine a little bit more protection, but you're only 10 of it, okay? So you're like, instead of having a 20 grade oil, and instead of having a 30 grade oil, you're at a 20 grade oil. I don't think you drive this car too hard. This engine really doesn't work hard on the car because it's small. We're going to put it in, okay? So it's not the recommended oil. It's not 530, and it's a little bit thinner than the recommended oil. So it's not really giving the protection that it needs. So I don't recommend you use it. But what's beautiful about the oil is this. It's synthetic, okay? And because it's synthetic, it gives you a little bit more protection, okay? How many liters is this small little engine going to hold? I don't know. I don't think it's going to hold too much. I think it's probably going to hold maybe 3 liters. Okay, I'm going to get my trusty funnel in here. All right, a bit of a pain where the funnel has to go. We're going to add my oil. And I can hear it going down into the oil pan. I can hear it literally running into the oil pan. It's making noise. The shop is so quiet. Oh my gosh. It's like a ghost town in here. So let's get somebody involved here. Hansa, what am I going to do now? I've just added oil. What's the best thing that I can do to see how much oil I've added to this engine? The easiest thing I can do and the best thing that I can do. What can I do?
You could like put the pin in.
I could put the thing in. Yeah, I could. And what's that thing that I'm going to put in? And what am I going to do with it?
I said like you could put the pin in. I don't know if it's called a pin, but like.
Pin. It kind of looks like a pin. Let's see. Laya, tell her what she's talking about. I see it there. Ryan just said it, okay? So Ryan said, we're gonna use the dipstick, yeah, okay? So what we're gonna do is, that little thing that looks like a pinhole, it's a long thing, all right? We call it the dipstick, okay? So we just have to locate the dipstick, and the dipstick is down here. And how can I see the dipstick? It's got this yellow handle on it, okay? And you can see the dipstick here. So I've located the dipstick. I'm gonna pull it out, and I'm gonna give it a wipe, okay? And there's my dipstick there. And if you're looking at the dipstick, okay, take a look at this, and it's kind of neat, okay? So you've got a minimum low mark here, and then if you go all the way up here, that's the minimum high mark, okay? So, sorry, minimum low and maximum, okay, oil level right here. Let's see. I was at Laya. Laya, what is from the minimum low mark to the maximum mark? What's the amount of oil that we can put in this car? So from minimum here to maximum, how many liters? And you should remember this from yesterday. And it should be.
I do not remember.
Don't even worry about it. Mariana, tell her. So from the minimum mark here to the maximum mark here, how many liters? Mariana's going to write in the chat, IDK. I don't know. Mariana might not even be with. Is Mariana with us? Yeah, there's 16 of us, so she should be with us. Okay. Khalees, can you tell the class how many liters between the minimum and the maximum marks?
What you mean on the dipstick or in the actual?
Yeah. So on the dipstick, you've got a minimum low mark, and then you've got a maximum mark. And how many liters normally from the minimum to the maximum on most cars? It's usually how many liters?
Is it 2?
Nope. How about half of 2?
1.5?
Well, half of 2 is 1. You got it. Right? So 1.5 would make it 3. So
Yeah, make it 3. All right.
So in between the minimum and the maximum mark here, it's normally a liter. So what have I done? I think I've added about maybe 1.5 liters already. Let's see what I get on a dipstick. Okay, so I've given it a wipe. Okay, let's dip it back in. So that pin thing, Hansa, is called the dipstick. And you can usually find it because it's got a yellow or an orange handle on it. Pull it back out. So take a look. I've added about 1.5 liters of oil, and we've got it right down there in like the minimum mark. It's just below the minimum mark. So I know I can safely add another liter, no problem, okay? So it's probably gonna need another maybe 1.5 liters. I'm gonna add it until we get right to the top, okay? So I'll tell you how much I've put in. I put in 5. Oh, yeah, I put in about, how much does this hold? I put in 2 liters. Okay, so we've safely got another liter to go. And I'm just gonna kind of let it go down, and I'm gonna let it sit in the engine, okay? And then I'll just pull my dipstick up, push my dipstick back in. So I'm not gonna push it in as yet, okay? Just kind of leave it hanging there, all right? I'm gonna continue to do what I gotta do on this, all right? So as I continue, I'm gonna check my accessory belts. What else do I have to check? I have to check my accessory belts. I have to check my spark plugs. Now on this car here, because it's very, very tight, okay? The spark plugs are in a really bad spot, and they're in the back here. So what I've got to do in order to check the spark plugs, oh my gosh, in order to check the spark plugs on, oh my, I'm not going to, this air filter housing can't come out, not easily, no. Holy smokes, to get to the spark plugs on this, it's going to be a bit of a job. Okay, so I'll be able to at least maybe check spark plug number 1, and I can pull it out and check it. Let's see what that is now. Okay, so push my dipstick all the way in, and we're almost right here at the full mark, okay? So I'm gonna add just a little bit more. We're gonna get it right to the full mark, and then I'm gonna start it, and you're gonna see what happens when we start it, okay? So again, I'm gonna jump in the car and look for my light, make sure my light goes off when I start the car. A little bit more. That'll take us up to the full mark. I don't want to start this yet. So what I'm going to do, and again, I'm going to do this little trick like I showed you guys. I don't want oil dripping everywhere, so I'm going to pull my funnel out, stick it into this, okay? No oil dripping anywhere. I haven't made a mess as yet. Now, to get to my spark plug, it's in the back here. I've got to pull off the coil. So I'll try and do that. And again, this isn't a real tricky spot. So I'll do what I can. If I can get the coil out, I should be able to pull out the plug. As long as I can get a socket in there. And I've already pulled out the socket that I need. So the socket that I need is going to be a flexible socket. Trying to get this plug off. Oh my gosh, using a screwdriver on that. Well, I've got to use a screwdriver because I can't get my hand in there. And what I tell students, okay, if it's in a very bad spot, we really can't get to it, we don't bother checking it, okay, because if it's in a really inaccessible spot, it doesn't make sense to try and fight to get it out, because 9 times out of 10, the spark plugs are going to be good unless the car has some really high mileage on it, okay? Because platinum spark plugs, they'll last 100,000 kilometers, okay? So I've got the plug out. See the plug there. I'm going to go and get some tools, and we're just going to try and pull that coil out. And I cannot use the tool that I brought over. So I'm going to use this tool, okay? So I'm going to use a little 1/4-inch ratchet. So it's a tiny little ratchet, okay, with a tiny little socket. Then I'm going to try to take some. Okay, so we've got the bolt out. I've removed the ignition coil, so that's what the ignition coil looks like. So I've got that out. Okay, I'm going to try and remove the spark plug. Okay, if I can get to the spark plug, we can remove it. If I cannot get to the spark plug, we ain't taking it out. So what I'm going to use now is I'm going to use a flexible. It's a flexible spark plug socket. Okay, and try and slip it in there. Fits, it fits, and if it doesn't fit, we don't bother taking it out. I need my. Okay, so now I've got that in there, and I need a nail ratchet, so I'm going to get that. So now, instead of using my 1/4 drive air ratchet, I'm going to use my 3/8 air ratchet, which is a little bit bigger, okay? So David, a job like this would probably cost you easily $90. Okay, so here's what I've done. I've pulled out his spark plug, and it doesn't look good. Okay, now looking at this spark plug, okay, this spark plug has got all this white stuff on it. Okay, and what that white stuff means is coolant is getting into his combustion chamber. Okay, so that white residue on top of the spark plug has to do with coolant. So David, if you find that the engine is running a little bit rough, it's because your spark plugs are contaminated with coolant. And that's going to cause you some grief. All right? Here's what I'm going to tell you. You can change spark plugs. What I've done, guys, is I've just gone over here to my wire brush. Try and clean it up a bit. So, you can pick the spark plugs out, you can clean them up, you can change the spark plugs, but you're still going to end up with the same problem. So you've probably got some sort of like head gasket leak. Listen, it's not a big deal, all right? Now, if I was a mechanic that got paid to do this, I'd say, yeah, you need a head gasket, you got to replace it, it's going to cost you $600. Forget about it, okay? It's not burning a lot, but it is burning coolant. So what I've done is I've taken the wire brush and I've just removed the coolant that was there, that was on top of this, okay? So I'm going to put it back in, and I've only checked cylinder number 1. So I do not know the condition of number 2, number 3, nor number 4. And I'm not going to try and take them out because they're in here and they're really inaccessible. This one was a little bit accessible, so I did it. But I'm not getting paid to do this, okay? So because I'm not getting paid, I don't have to do this. And that's what's nice about doing the job that I do. So now, let's put our coil back in, okay? Put our bolt back in that holds the coil. Bolt is back in, and my plug, I just have to plug it back in, and then I'm going to start this car, okay? So what I have to do is I have to put the car in drive to make the engine start, because if I keep it in park, this car won't start. Okay, so I've got that back on, I've got my plug back on, I've got all my tools out. And I'm going to start the car, but I'm not going to put this air filter housing back on, because again, if I have to add oil again, it's in the back there. But what I do have to do is I have to put my drain filter back. Okay, so let's do that. I'm going to start the car. But before we start the car, I'm just going to use the dipstick again. I'm going to dip it in there. I'm going to check my level, and it should be right at the top. And I want you guys to see what happens. Okay, so this, check it in. Oh my gosh, I'm so good. So right now, if we're looking at the dipstick, okay, maybe you can't see it as clearly as I can. But right now, my level is right up to the maximum level, right here on the dipstick. So it's perfect, okay? I'm going to start the car. And what you're going to notice is when we start the car, maybe the color of the oil will change a little bit. It'll turn maybe a little tiny bit darker, because don't forget, when we drain the oil, we can't drain all of the oil. So there's still some old oil left in there. When we start, it's going to kind of mix together, okay? So I'm going to jump in. I'm going to check to make sure that I find my oil light. Put the car in drive, okay, and then we're going to let it run, okay? All right, nice. The car, guys. Again, because it's a hybrid, I'm going to have to put it in drive. And what I've done is I've kept the wheels off the ground. All right, so you heard the car start. To tell you the honest truth, guys, I couldn't find the oil light on this, but it's okay. I'm going to check underneath to make sure there's no leaks. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull my dipstick. I'm going to give it a wipe. And I check my oil level again. Now don't forget, the oil's been splashing around in the crankcase, so it might have made a mess. Okay, so oil is still beautiful, but what's happened is this, okay? I'm not sure if you can really see these lines, okay? I can only look at my monitor and see what I'm showing you. There's the maximum line, there's the minimum line. My oil level has moved from the maximum line right down to there. I'm not sure if you can see it, but I can see it clearly. It's gone down from here to about here. So if in between here and here represents 1 liter of oil, from here to about here, it's not quite halfway. So I'm going to say it's probably about 0.3 of a liter of oil, maybe 0.4 of a liter of oil. I'm just going to add it. Okay. Now, David, it's your car. Where did the oil go? How come we went down about half a liter of oil?
I went into the filter.
Got it, okay. So guys, I don't fill the filter up. I've never done that. I've just never practiced that, okay? Nissan's always used a small oil filter. At least when I started in like 89, when I started, they were using a small oil filter. So yes, okay. The oil filter needs oil. And that oil filter, even though it's not very big, will hold about a third, about 0.3 or 0.4 of a liter of oil, okay? And that's where the oil disappeared to. So we put it right to the maximum mark on the dipstick. We started the car. The level went from high, halfway down to, to the low mark, all right? That 0.4, 0.3 of a liter of oil just went into the oil filter. So I know I've got to add it. So I just went through those steps there. Here's what I'm going to tell you, okay? In industry, we just never did this. That's just a total waste of time. I know that the oil filter holds 0.3 liters of oil. If I'm doing it by hand, which is, you just don't even do this at the dealership, okay? But in today's dealerships, the parts department, oh, it's a Toyota Prius, it holds 3.4 liters of oil. I'm going to set number 10 oil, oh my gosh. In hoist number 10, it's got an oil line, and they call it like an oil, oh my God, what would they call it? They call it the oil, I don't know, distributor, I don't, what do they call it? The oil, well, let's just call it the oiling unit at hoist number 10. I'm going to set it to 3.4 liters. And when that mechanic gets there, okay, he just squeezes the trigger, and at 3.2 liters, it's going to stop delivering oil to that engine. And all the mechanic has to do is put the cap back on, and everything is good. We do it once. We don't even double check on the dipstick because we don't need to, okay? When I was working at the dealership, they didn't have that capability as yet. So all of the oil lines that had oil were all live. So you can pump in as much oil as you want, okay, into each car, but you didn't, all right? So you had a little counter on it, and it was a manual counter, and you would just kind of set it back to 0. And then when it went to 3 liters, you'd stop at about 3.5 liters, all right, which is what it held with the oil filter. You would always double check by using your dipstick, and you would make sure that once all the oil was in, that you actually had a little bit above the maximum mark. And by having it a little bit above the maximum mark, you know, okay, when the filter gets filled with oil, okay, everything is good, all right? So David, your car is gonna need another 0.3 of a liter. I'm gonna add it right now. I just wanted to take you guys through the step, but if you guys weren't here, I would have added the 3.3. I wouldn't have needed this extra step, but I wanted you guys to just see that some of the oil would disappear. And I wanted to get the correct answer out of one of you that yes, the oil filter holds oil. So there we go. We've got enough there. It'll take us right back up to the maximum mark. I'm gonna put my cover back on for my air filter. Clips go back on. And these clips are very easy. You just kind of put them on, and then you pull them back. There's a little. And once you do that, it's nicely sealed. I'm gonna just take a quick look at his accessory belts. And what can I tell you about your accessory belts, David? They're good. Okay. They're a little bit old. Okay, but you know what? Decent shape, not too many cracks. It's a tiny little belt on a tiny little engine. You've got a coolant leak. And what you can do is when you get this car back, David, you can just open up the hood and just take a look and you'll see some pink stuff right on top of your water pump. It's not leaking really badly. It looks to me like a very slow leak. Don't even bother with it. Just leave it alone. Unless you want to spend money on the car, you can take it someplace. They'll charge you a couple $100 to do a water pump, which you don't need. Okay? So if you look down, you're going to see a little bit of pink staining on top of your water pump. It's just kind of like oozing out, but it's all dry. I wouldn't even bother with it. Just leave it alone. I can see a little bit too at your lower radiator hose. All right. So again, nothing for you to worry about, but I'm going to note it because I've seen it. Okay. So I think as far as the inspection on this vehicle, we're done. Okay. I'm going to run down this sheet. We've done the air filter. And if you guys are looking at it, okay, we've done the air filter. Battery fluid, I couldn't check it. The engine oil level, we've done. The brake fluid level, we've done. Clutch and automatic transmission fluid levels, you're checking for leaks. I've already checked for leaks. We know there's no leaks under the car. I haven't checked the horn and wipers. All the lights we've checked, the tires are great. The linings are great for the brake pads. The rear pads we didn't check because we couldn't get the drums off. Steering components are all good. Suspension components front are good. Suspension components rear are good. Exhaust is good. The dust covers and the boots are good. I inspected the spark plug, but I'm going to write down number 1 inspected. Signs of coolant. Okay. And then your accessory belts, good. And there's no cracks, all right? So the only thing that I've got to do now is just check the clutch and automatic transmission fluid. And I've got to find where the dipstick would be for that. And the transmission is literally below this unit here. And if I don't see a dipstick, because they might not have one because it's inaccessible, then I just leave it. Okay? I don't see a dipstick anywhere for the transmission. I'm going to go back under the car and I'm just going to double check. But I see nothing here for the transmission. I'm looking with my light. I'm checking with my light. Nothing, 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 nothing. Nothing here, guys. I don't see anything up on the top. So I can't check my transmission fluid level. I normally have to have the car running. Okay, I'm going to pick the car back up just to check it quickly. Okay, here's what I can tell you. What I can tell you, I know you don't see like from my chest down. What I can tell you is there has to be a way to check the transmission fluid level on this car. I just don't know how to do it. Okay, and it's driving okay, and there's absolutely no leaks under here. Okay, and I'm checking right below the water pump area too, just to see if there's any oil coming out of that area there, and there's nothing. I'm also rechecking the belt. Okay. And again, the belt looks good. It's a little bit old, but it's okay. All right, I can't say anything bad about it. There is a way, obviously, to check the transmission fluid level on this car. I just don't know how. There's no dipstick underneath. No, there's nothing under here, okay? And it's nice and dry, okay? So it is what we call bone dry under here, okay? I'm gonna bring the car back down. Now, the last thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to show you guys how we check it. The last thing that we're going to do is we're going to check the wipers, all right? To check the wipers, we don't sweep the glass with the wipers when it's dry. We sweep the glass with the wipers when the glass is wet, all right? So, I'm going to bring the car all the way down. I'm just going to bring the camera up so you guys can see. So in order to check the horn and the wipers, and I show this to my students, okay? In order to check the wipers, okay, we do two things when we check the wipers, okay? So we don't sweep the windshield with the wipers when the glass is dry, because that could scratch it, okay? So what I mean we don't sweep is, we don't turn the wipers on to sweep the glass when it's dry, all right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna check two things, all right? I'm gonna turn on the washers. And if I turn on the washers, that wets the glass, prevents it from being scratched, okay? And it also checks my wipers, all right? So we're not just checking that the wipers work, we're also checking that the blades are good, all right? And when I wet the glass, if the blades are not good, there's going to be streaks left on the glass, all right? So if there's streaks left on the glass, okay, because the wipers are working, but the blades aren't good, I can write down that it needs new wiper blades, okay? If I try and turn it on and the wipers don't sweep, well, something's wrong, the wipers don't work. But by wetting the glass and then sweeping it, we prevent the glass from being scratched, and we also check the condition of the wiper blades, okay? So wiper blades are just, they've got a very thin layer of rubber here, okay? A lot of them have like some synthetic rubber, some of them are silicone, last a little bit longer, okay? And we check the blades on this, okay? Because the blades on these, they'll go bad, okay? After a while, they just get old and hard and cracked and they'll just rip, okay? So let's do this. I'm just gonna jump in the car and we'll check. So now I have to figure out where the washers are and then use the appropriate switches. Okay. You all heard what I heard because the shop is nice and quiet. Okay. So the blades are great. The wipers are working, but you can all hear that as the wipers are working. So he's got something in there that's squeaking. Okay. Which is not going to need some sort of lubricant. Okay. And it only gets worse. All right. So what I always tell people is this: cars never fix themselves. All right. Cars will never fix themselves. So what you want to do on your car is, when you've got a small problem, fix the small problem before it turns into a big problem, okay? So yes, it's making a little bit of noise. David, here's what you're gonna do for the summertime, all right? You're gonna take your wiper blades off, you're gonna take off all these plastic covers, and you're gonna try and figure out where the heck it's squeaking, because the squeak isn't good. It's a little squeak now, but it might get worse, okay? My suggestion is, I don't know what my suggestion is. Everything's kind of covered. You've got this big, massive mechanism covered in metal. You've got plastic. You've got more plastic here that covers everything, so it's all hidden. You have to take your time on it and just play with it and figure out where the squeak is coming from. And all you have to do, David, is get something like this. which is WD-40 or any kind of spray lubricant. Find out where it's making the noise, okay? Have somebody in the car operate the wipers. As it's squeaking, you spray where it's moving, and then when you spray where it's moving and you get to the part that's squeaking, it'll stop squeaking, and that's probably all you need. A little bit of lubricant on whatever. Okay, I'm back. So what I was telling you guys was I've just torqued I've torqued 3 wheels. I've got the last one left. I just want to show you guys. Normally I torque the wheels to 95 to 100 foot-pounds, but some manufacturers actually tighten their wheels to a little bit less. So David was kind enough to check the torque specs for the wheel nuts on his Prius, and it's 80 foot-pounds. So I've set the torque wrench to 80 foot-pounds, and I'll just show you what I do. And because of the wheel lock, I do the wheel lock last, okay? So you'll hear the wrench click. So, and we don't have to crisscross for this, okay? Because we've already tightened it. We can tighten it just in a circle, okay? So we got 1, 2, 3, 4. The last one is the wheel lock. I've set it up, okay? And if you guys notice, okay, for every wheel nut that I just did, I still had to pull on the torque wrench, and the wheel nut still turned a little bit. And that's the reason why we use that small little impact gun here in the shop, because it doesn't tighten things down. It doesn't over tighten things. All right. And we always double check by hand with the torque wrench. And as long as we do that, guys, we know everything is good. Okay. We've checked everything now. I'm going to move to the classroom, and I'm going to show you what I did on the 20-point inspection sheet. And David, I'll make a photocopy of it. So I'll slip it into the car, and you have a copy of the inspection on your car, and your oil change is done. The only thing that I haven't done is I haven't slipped the oil change sticker in your cars yet. Okay, so that's the last thing that we've got to do. All right, I'll get the oil change sticker, check the mileage. I'm going to document that, and I'm going to move to the just unwinding the wrench. Okay, we're going to move to the document camera.
Again, guys. All right, so here's our 20-point inspection. We filled out make, model, mileage, and the VIN number, okay? And what I did was, if you're looking at your copy, or even if you can see this copy here, it says 17 digits. Whenever you write the VIN number down, and there isn't enough room unless you write it really small, count it, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. As long as we have 17 digits, we're okay. When I wrote it down, I missed an 8 here, all right? So when I counted 16. My bad. I went back, double checked it, and I saw where I was missing the 1 digit, and it was a number 8. All right, so here's what we did. We checked the air filter. The air filter was okay. What I can write down, just if I want to, okay, I can write down that it's older, but it's still fine, okay? Battery fluid level, we can't check it because it's a hybrid, okay? I noted hybrid, okay? And I know what it says here, maintenance required, but we always take our notes in here, all right? Engine oil level, new and good. So that's for the oil level and the condition, okay? Check for leaks, there's no leaks, all of that is good, all right? If there was maintenance required, okay, I could also jot it down in here. Brake fluid, clear, and it was great. The level was fine, all right? Front brakes looked like they were just done. Well, not just done, but they were done a little while ago. They're like new, okay? The rears, I just couldn't check. I couldn't get those drums off. Clutch and automatic transmissions, I'm going to write down NA for not applicable. We couldn't check it, okay? We checked for leaks, and that's all okay. Coolant hoses and fluid levels, okay? All the fluid levels were okay, all right? I'm going to write down visible, dry, coolant, okay? Lower hose. So I wrote that down because I saw it. Power steering system and fluid levels, I didn't have to check for leaks because it's electric, okay? David was saying that it felt a little stiff. Didn't feel stiff to me, but I don't know the cars. We checked all the exterior lights. So we checked the park lights, we checked the low beams, I didn't check the high beams. It's no big deal, okay? But what's really important is when you guys are checking the park lights, when you walk around the car, people always miss the license plate lights. So in the back, for the license plate, you've got either one light or two lights that illuminate that license plate, and a lot of people miss it, so you gotta check that. Tire condition and pressure, they were great. Okay, tires are like brand new. Okay, and I'm gonna note that, like new, all four. Okay, front brake linings, I measured the left side and the right side at 8 millimeters. I couldn't check the back. Steering components, they all look okay. And when I wiggle the wheel, right, this way, then I wiggle it this way, I could check steering components. Okay, I could check front suspension. I can check rear suspension by doing that. Everything felt nice and tight. There was no play. The exhaust system, when I walked from the front of the car to the back of the car, and when I started the car, because when you start the car, if you hear anything noisy, all right, you've got to be able to identify what's that noise, okay? So we walked from the front to the back. I checked all the exhaust and the mounting. So what the mounting means is the exhaust kind of hangs on these rubber hangers, and you got to make sure none of them are ripped, okay, or broken, okay? Because what ends up happening is the exhaust will break prematurely if any of those hangers are broken, all right? So we check all of that. I didn't walk you through it. I'll walk you through it completely another day, just not today. The dust covers and the drive shaft boots, I need to show you guys what those are under the car. We'll go over it, but they were fine. I only inspected, it says spark plugs visual inspection. I only inspected number one, and I said inspected, and there were signs of coolant. So there was coolant getting into number one, all right? Fuel filter, it's not applicable because it's in the tank, and the accessory belts were good, right? And I said it was just a visual check, all right? Today is May 14th. Okay, we've got the mileage here that documents it. Now on the back, what am I gonna do, okay? He had indicated the power steering was stiff. I'm not worried about that. There is a rust hole in the right side rear corner, okay? But it doesn't go inside. So I noted that. That's one thing that I noted, okay? I don't think, is there anything else that I noted on this? Do you guys remember me noting anything else? No. The drums, seized on hub. Now, if we're in class and you guys were doing this, I would tell you guys, okay, you're gonna recommend front brake service, right? And why do we want to recommend that front brake service? Just to get some lubricant on there to make sure everything moves nice and freely. If we could pull the drums off, I'm sure we would probably recommend a service on the drums too, but we just couldn't get it off. Okay, so front service, well, you would write brake service. Okay, I think as far as anything else, I didn't make any other notes. So I know it took me quite some time. That was an hour and a half. Normally it's like 15, 20 minutes for me to do that whole thing. But I was kind of talking. So I showed you guys a handful of things. I want to show you guys all of what I did. I'm not going to remove another spark plug